Hey everyone, it's Chase Elleby and Jared Easter at Williams, Elleby, Howard and Easter. Hope everyone's doing great. Today, Jared and I are going to talk to you all about autonomous vehicles. We see them a lot on the road now. Tesla obviously is the big auto manufacturer who came out, I would say probably originally with a self-driving car.
Yes.
So as you can imagine, there's been a whole lot of talk and lawsuits and claims and things like that that have stemmed from autonomous vehicles. Actually, I think recently Tesla was in the news having to do something a little bit different than what we do as personal injury lawyers, but more on the, I think, like false advertisement saying that their technology is so great and that self-driving is right around the corner and this, that, and the other. But today I want to focus on just kind of what is autonomous driving versus, you know, your regular safety features. Is it safe? Is it safe to have these vehicles on the road? And then what happens if you're in a wreck and it's caused by someone in an autonomous vehicle in that self-driving mode, not self-driving mode, and those sort of things. So I guess starting right off, Jared, what is an autonomous vehicle?
So an autonomous vehicle is similar to a regular vehicle right now, but the main differences are it will literally drive itself from point A to point B. So if you get into a Tesla or another vehicle that has autonomous features, you type in the address of where you want to go, you press a button, and literally you can drive for hours, theoretically, without having to use the steering wheel, the gas pedals, the brakes. It will navigate through city traffic, lane changes, everything that you need to get where you're going.
So do you have to be in the driver's seat?
Yes, you do have to be in the driver's seat, and formerly with Tesla, which is what I have experience with, is formerly you would have to touch the steering wheel, hold onto the steering wheel in some capacity. Now with the new updates, that is gone, and you just have to be looking at the road. So there's actually a camera in the car that can see your eyes and your head, and if you're looking down, texting, messing with the radio for too long, it will actually alert you to remain looking at the road. If you don't do that, you disobey it, it will essentially ban you from using autonomous capabilities. So yes, you do have to be in the driver's seat. You do have to be paying some amount of attention to where you're going. But it's a lot different than what I think people have become accustomed to with the laser-guided cruise control or the lane assist, things like that that do have autonomous features, but they're not fully, it's not the car driving itself.
Right, so it's more like safety features to help you, you know, I always think of, like you said, like the lane assist, or, you know, a lot of people have on their side view mirrors a little light that lights up, letting you know there's a car in the blind spot. You know, that's obviously different than self-autonomous because you're still driving in control of the car, but it's also an additional safety feature. So, all right, I guess the question then becomes, is it safe to have an autonomous vehicle on the road?
I think it depends on who you ask,
right? The classic lawyer answer, like, it depends, right?
It depends.
As personal injury lawyers, they're not safe. No, I'm just kidding.
It remains to be seen. I think a lot of people, first of all, I think the data still is skewed because I'm not sure how in the real world you tell when an accident happens. Was it self-driving or was it not? Was the mode on? Was it not? You know, that I think will be interesting to see over time how it goes. But Tesla claims it is very safe, 1,000 times safer than human driving based on their data. I think the last they kind of put out their press release was that basically they are testing one accident using full autonomous capabilities for every 7 million miles driven, versus NHTSA would say that with human operated cars that the statistics show there's an accident one in every 650,000 miles. So it's a considerable difference, so Tesla claims, as far as safety goes. Okay. But obviously they have some skin in the game and self-interest to make it very safe.
Right. So I guess, I mean, I don't know if I would consider myself old school, but I don't really like the idea of having a car drive for me. I think half the fun of driving is being in control. If you're a control freak like myself and you let go of that control to a computer, it doesn't really jibe well for me.
It's pretty awesome.
I don't know.
I will tell you.
I just couldn't do it. So I guess, yeah, I mean, it's safe in theory. You know, sort of the fallback I would always say is just always have your hand on the steering wheel.
I think there's the obvious argument that it's probably safer than the people who are texting and driving, drinking and driving, things of that nature that we just all know are super unsafe and you shouldn't be doing. So that's low-hanging fruit to be like, self-driving is safer than drunk driving, but I mean,
right.
what are you really accomplishing there?
Right. Okay, so then the next question becomes, let's kind of do a hypothetical. Let's say that you're just driving down the road and all of a sudden you get smashed by a Tesla. You don't really know, I guess, during the crash itself as to what happened other than that you weren't at fault. So do you have a claim? Do you have a case? Who are you suing? Of course, assuming you have injuries and things like that. So how does that work with a self-driving vehicle?
Well, I think initially not much has changed. There's still a person in the driver's seat. They still presumably own the car. Someone owns the car. In Georgia, at its base, the insurance follows the owner of the vehicle. So starting out, I think it's very similar to what it's always been. If you own a Tesla and you cause a crash, whether you're using self-driving mode or not, it's going to be your insurance on the hook. I think where it gets more complicated is if it is a significant accident and all of a sudden there's an allegation that, the self-driving malfunctioned in some way. Then maybe that opens the door to have a products liability claim against Tesla. I don't know, what, assuming there's some expert out there who can kind of go back through the data and figure out what went wrong, then maybe there's a claim there. And then there's this third rail that I think we're starting to see more of, is the idea of a fully autonomous vehicle, cars driving around with no people in them. And that opens a whole Pandora's box of, I would assume that whoever owns the car would still be responsible, but I think right now there's no law in Georgia that allows, or I don't think there's a law that allows fully driverless vehicles yet. So presumably if that day comes, there's going to have to be new legislation anyway to answer that question.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised in the next 5 years or so there'll be some specific legislation as a deal stop fully autonomous vehicles in Georgia specifically. I'm sure other states will have that come sooner, but kind of backing up, to answer Jared's question, or I guess dive in a little bit deeper, as personal injury lawyers, we're always looking, I guess, initially at, okay, well, what happened on the wreck? What caused the wreck, right? On its face, it doesn't really change necessarily that there's a Tesla that caused a wreck when you're first investigating that wreck, right? You kind of hit on what I was thinking is the product's liability angle, because let's just assume in that hypothetical that when the wreck occurs, the person who quote unquote caused the wreck says, I was in that fully driving mode, the sensors should have picked up that there was a car coming or that the car was stopped, it didn't stop, I tried to override it but didn't have enough time, boom. So then you have a situation where you kind of have that comparative fault, right? It's where the driver is saying, well, okay, I might have some degree of fault because it is my car and things like that, but at the same time, this system completely failed, right? And this is a system I was relying on that it was reasonable for me to rely on this system, and for whatever reason, that system failed. So you do kind of run into the question of then when you get those types of cases in, okay, how do we get that data, right? You can do a download. There's experts that will come in and make sure that the car was functioning the way it should be functioning. I would imagine with Tesla, for instance, Tesla has, they do updates like
quarterly, if not sooner.
Right. So, everything is so, what's the word I'm looking for? It's on a computer, right? Everything is right there, so you could upload all that information that you may need. So that definitely becomes a little bit different of an aspect when it comes to, how if an at-fault driver then all of a sudden says, well, yeah, but the car should have stopped or the car should have braked because of this feature. We see it a little bit, when someone hits someone in the back and they say, well, my brakes failed. I guess that's kind of the same analogy you would make for, oh, by the way, my autonomous vehicle system failed. But again, because the brakes is a little bit different because you're required to upkeep your car, whereas the autonomous system, that's just presumably assuming that the technology completely
update somewhere.
Well, right, or the technology completely failed.
And I think as personal injury attorneys, something that we're going to see more of too is we run into situations with, as I was mentioned briefly earlier, severe injuries where there might not be enough money to go around. Like, for instance, if there's a tragic situation where a victim is killed as a result of a car crash and the person driving that autonomous vehicle only has minimum limits or a low amount of money, then I think there's an ethical obligation for us to try to make sure that there wasn't something wrong with the autonomous system, because in that case, it could potentially open up a new angle to pursue more funds in a way to fully compensate for an injury that wouldn't otherwise be available.
Right. That just goes back to, like just kind of breaking that down to a simple explanation rather would be, okay, let's assume that the person who caused the wreck is 50% at fault and the vehicle itself is 50% at fault, the manufacturer rather is 60 or 50% at fault. And if the total damages for that wreck, or let's say it's a wrongful death case, could be in the millions, well, you get, half of that would presumably come from the driver and the other half would presumably come from the manufacturer, assuming you have a claim that you could make against the manufacturer for some sort of product defect or product liability type of action. So, but yeah, I guess the kind of long and short of it is that it definitely becomes pretty complicated, or it can be pretty complicated if there's a wreck involving autonomous vehicle. That's why it's always super important anytime you've been involved in a wreck to contact a personal injury lawyer like myself or Jared or Joel or Mark at our firm. We handle car wreck cases all the time. We've handled products liability cases, and it's definitely something that as soon as it happens, it's best to call, and so we can start investigating. All right, well, I think that wraps up this video. I mean, we hit a lot of topics. If you guys like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Williams, ELLEBY, Howard, and Easter, and we will see y'all next week.
As personal injury lawyers, we love what we do, and we're happy to share the experience we've gained in personal injury law. To help our family, friends, and YouTube subscribers, we've shared over 300 personal injury videos covering various injury topics. So if you'd like to gain more knowledge that may help protect yourself or a loved one when they're on the roads or out in public, check out our channel or view our playlist of shorts for quick personal injury tips.